It's time to talk about the skipper. What will year 2 look like for Craig Counsell?
You are Locked On Cubs, your daily Chicago Cubs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Cubs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Sam Olber, and I'm a lifelong fan, taking my passion into a discussion with you on all things Cubs. Thanks for being part of the show and making Locked On Cubs your first listen today. And the best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day, like the video, and give us a comment below. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Happy Friday, everybody. Really good episode for you today. We're going to continue our best and worst Cubs series leading into opening day with best and worst trades. Really fun one to do research on. Then we're going to do a little 9 in 9 minutes. I don't know if you've ever seen the Chris Berman fastest 2 minutes. We're going to do that 9 minutes with all Cubs position players. It'll be a fun little exercise. But we're going to get started with Craig Counsell, the manager, the skipper, the guy in charge. And for those of you who are not everydayers, for those of you that haven't been here since Craig Counsell was hired in November of 2023, probably my biggest regret since we've had this show, or maybe regret's not the right word, but my biggest miss, let's call it a miss. When you have a show like this, mistakes happen. You're talking every day. You're going to be right sometimes. You're going to be wrong. But there's certain things you can't miss on. There's certain things, at your job or in life where, you can't just go, well, I made a mistake. And one of those is when the Cubs hired Craig Counsell. I thought it was everything. I thought it was the missing piece to a division title. I thought the reason why the Brewers were so much better on the margins and why the Brewers were so much better than us in close games and in certain situations was because they had Craig Counsell and we had David Ross. And I was wrong. And I spent really 2024, once the season got away, in May and June, specifically kind of going on an apology tour. My own mom, who really doesn't watch the Cubs particularly much, sent me multiple texts throughout the year going, what's the difference between this guy and last year, and this team and last year? I don't see anything. And all of it was fair. And it didn't work out the way I thought it would. And to be honest with you, upon reflection, I really thought it was more of me miscalculating the manager position versus actually Craig Counsell doing a bad job. Because when you really look back at the season, the Cubs were actually worse last year than they were in 2023, and they ended with the same record. So you could actually make the case that Counsell did, help them win a couple extra games. I mean, that would be pushing it, but for me, it just wasn't what I expected. I thought there would be more energy. I thought there'd be a different feel around the team. And some Brewers people that listen to the show told me, like, Sam, I don't know what you were expecting. Like, this is the guy. And I thought, especially with the umpire stuff and Seiya, Seiya has a language barrier. He can't defend himself with umpires. So I thought Counsell would be quicker to catch little things like that. Like, you guys know me, those who do listen every day, you know how serious I take little things. And I think that stuff matters. A lot of people don't. I do. I also think that just, the press conferences, the interviews, it just seemed very kind of just lethargic, and it felt like the team was that way. In May and June, it just kind of felt like deja vu every day. Same game, same post-game interview. We didn't hit enough. We didn't do this enough. And I thought there'd be more. I thought I would be able to see the difference pop off the screen a little bit more than I did. And ultimately, that was probably on me. But maybe it wasn't. Because I've talked to Matt about this extensively. I've talked to some people that are, close to the team as well. And, one of Matt's points was all year last year, even before the Cubs hired Craig Counsell, was that maybe year one was just a feel out year for him. Maybe he was taking notes. Maybe he was observing more than he was leading. Maybe he was seeing kind of, what this team needed. And from what I've heard, he had a lot more hands this offseason in moves and margin type moves than he did in his first off season, and that makes sense to me because Counsell is a real process oriented guy, and he is the type of guy that might say, "Hey, let's just give it a year." And when you listen to him now, and you listen to Flaherty talk and some of the other coaches, remember, he did change first base coaches, he did change third base coaches, like he did make some changes, and you listen, it just seems like there's a little bit of a renewed energy and almost kind of like a, "Hey, now we go." Okay, now we know it. Now we see it. Now we know what we need. Now it's our time. And I've noticed some slight differences with him. I watch pretty much every time he talks, and I just think there's a little bit more energy, a little bit more urgency there. I know that people think that doesn't exist, but I do. And let me tell you this: Jed, said how great of a job Counsell did last year, and that's fine. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. If the manager didn't matter that much, right? Like people say, Jed Hoyer wouldn't have done David Ross like that, and Craig Counsell wouldn't have gotten $40 million from Tom Ricketts. He's one of the highest paid guys for a reason. And the Cubs have really struggled under Jed Hoyer, winning close games and being really good on the margins and being really good when it matters. We hear the phrase, the word sequencing a lot with Jed, right? And it's like, the timing. How many times have we all gone up? There's another grand slam when we're up 7, but we know tomorrow when we're down a run late, we're not going to be able to deliver. And I think Jed really thought Counsell was going to help with a lot of that stuff, and maybe he will. But the point I'm trying to make is don't think for one second that, oh yeah, managers, it doesn't matter that much. And they got Counsell. No, if it didn't matter that much, David Ross would still be managing, because David Ross is a Chicago Cubs hero for his leadership and his contributions to the 2016 World Series team. And like 2 weeks before he got let go, Tom Ricketts wrote in a letter that he did a great job. And then all of a sudden they let David Ross go to hire Craig Counsell. It wasn't a great situation, but the Cubs did that because they thought they were getting an elite guy. And I do think Craig Counsell is an elite guy. And I think you're going to see a little bit different of a version of him in year two. I think you're going to see a guy that's taking it a little bit more seriously, that's a little bit more locked in. Seiya mentioned their communication issues last year, and Counsell took responsibility for that. I think that's going to be fixed. I don't think Craig did anything last year decision-making wise where I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's happening. Like, I did see a difference between him and Ross where the decisions often made more sense over the course of 162. But I just think overall, not even just Counsell, the whole team, I just think there's going to be an elevated sense of urgency. Everybody knows that this team needs to make the playoffs this year. There's a lot of dialogue around the organization, MLB-wide, that hasn't been great, and the pressure's on. And I think you're going to get a better version of Craig Counsell in year two, a guy that understands the team more, understands what they need more. Remember, he's human, and he went from Milwaukee to Chicago, and that was a big change, a big adjustment. Small market to big market, rival to rival. And I have a feeling we're going to come back and go, hey, that's what we thought we were getting. And let me say this will be the last thing that I say, and it's important. Don't think for 1 second that Craig Counsell leaving Milwaukee and them basically getting better without him, with Murphy as their manager, who Counsell goes, way back with. Don't think for 1 second him leaving there and then coming to Chicago and the Cubs were basically the same team doesn't bother him, right? You don't get to where Craig Counsell has gotten to in his career as a player and now as a manager unless you are an absolute competitor at the highest level. He may show it differently. He may react differently, but I promise you, when his head hits that pillow at night, that bothers him. Hey, I left and they didn't miss a beat. I think you're going to see a motivated Craig Counsell. Now, he can't hit for the guys. He can't pitch for the guys. If Kyle Tucker hits 232, there's nothing he could do about it. But I think you're going to see a guy that knows this year has to be different, and he's going to do everything in his power to make that happen. And I just think there's going to be a little bit of a tone change, a little bit of a mood change, a little bit of a tone change where instead of it's, hey, there's nothing we could do, and, hey, we got to have more activity on the base paths and this. I think you're going to see an increased tone, an increased intensity, increase in urgency for this team, and it's going to help them get over the finish line. What else is going to help them get over the finish line is if their position players hit throughout 162. And coming up next, I'm going to tell you what each and every one of them needs to do in the 2025 season. That's coming up next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. What I've been focusing on is these MLB futures, and folks, Matt Shaw on FanDuel, Rookie of the Year, 4-1, plus 400. He's only behind Dylan Cruz, who I didn't even know was still a rookie, and of course, Roki Sasaki. I really think Matt Shaw could be in the Rookie of the Year race. That's what I think. Is it a nailed on? Absolutely. No, that's why he's 4-1. But I think there's some value there because this kid can hit. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are back here on Locked On Cubs. And if you guys have ever seen Chris Berman back in the day with Tom Jackson and the fastest 2 minutes, I'm going to do 9 minutes. We're going to go 9 and 9. And I'm going to tell you what every Cubs player, what they need to do and what the expectation and hope should be for their season. So we're going to get started right now with Miguel Amaya. We're going to go around the horn. Miguel Amaya, catcher. As we talked about with Miguel, bonus tier. If Miguel can just be a 700 plus OPS guy for this baseball team and control the running game just a little bit, we just need him to control the running game a little bit. We just need him to hit a little bit, and that should be enough for this team. His expectations, we don't need a whole lot from him. It would be great if we got a whole lot from him, but a 700 plus OPS guy, and then just make sure it's not a free-for-all on the base paths for opponents, especially the Reds and Brewers, and the Cubs will be in really good shape at the catcher position. And then just a quick honorable mention, same with Carson Kelly. If his OPS is in the high 6s and the 700s, he's controlling the running game. The Cubs don't need a ton from their catching position. They're not built that way. Just be serviceable, okay? First base, we're going to go with Michael Busch, of course. And with Busch, I'm a little bit more, I don't need to see a breakout Michael Busch season. I don't think the Cubs need that. Last year, Busch was really solid. He had 248. He had 21 home runs. He played really, really well down the stretch defensively. His OPS was 775. With Michael Busch, if we can just get that OPS in the 790s, maybe hit about 255, limit the strikeouts a little bit, and play the same sort of defense, that would be enough. It's kind of fun to realize the Cubs don't need a Michael Busch breakout. It would be great. Can it happen? Absolutely. But if you're getting a 790 OPS and Gold Glove caliber defense at first base from your left-handed, 26, 27-year-old first baseman, that's plenty, and that's good enough for Michael Busch. Going over to second base, Nico Hoerner. This is a make or break year, I think, for Nico. I really do. I know the wins above replacement is good. I understand that. But with Nico, it just wasn't good enough last year offensively. A lot of the damage he did was late in the year. And the thing that I like so much about Nico Hoerner is when he's right, his production is loud. And what I mean by that is it may not look great in the OPS column. You say, oh, he's hitting 281 with a 720 OPS. What's so great about him? Well, he gets big hits. He delivers when it matters. He's there when you need him. And last year, he just didn't get a whole lot of big hits for this baseball team. So for Nico Hoerner, same defense, great wins above replacement, yada, yada. I need to see Nico Hoerner get back to being a clutch hitter. I want that batting average right around 285. I don't care about any other stat. I don't care about his power. I don't care about his OPS. I don't even care about his OBP offensively. Put the ball in play, lead the team in average, be a 285, 290 guy that gets a lot of clutch base hits and play your great defense, and that'll be enough for this ball club. Dansby over at short. I just talked about Dansby last week, so this will be a little bit of a shorter one. I'll just repeat what I said shortly. Again, similar to Nico, great wins above replacement, great defense, need more offensively. It really starts with the slug with him. Let's elevate the slug. Let's hit between 245 and 265. Let's get that OPS right around 750, 760. That'd be wonderful with the defense that you provide, and that's plenty. That's plenty for Dansby Swanson, and the Cubs would be just fine if he did that. Swinging over to the hot corner, Matt Shaw, one of the most anticipated Cubs players, at least for me to watch this year. But the reality of it with Matt Shaw is that he really doesn't have to be that great because the Cubs got absolutely nothing from third base last year. Christopher Morel was a negative. Isaac Paredes, most of the time, was a negative. If Matt Shaw can just play league average third base defense and hit about 250 with an on base of about 310 and a slug of about 410, 415, that's going to help this baseball team a lot. Do I think he's capable of doing more than that? Absolutely. But the point of this exercise is I'm just telling what I think each Cub needs to do for this team to get to the next level, for this team to be really good. And Matt Shaw, as much as you would think, oh, he's got so much pressure on him because he's a rookie, he doesn't have that much pressure on him because he's replacing two guys that didn't produce last year. So just be league average defensively and be a 105, 106 WRC plus guy, and that'll be enough. Left field. Ian Happ. I think this is the year for Ian where defensively, obviously, he's mastered the position, so stay right where you're at there. I'd love to see Ian be a little bit more consistent throughout the year. He's consistently inconsistent, which is a part of the game, but I'd love to see him just be a little bit more consistent. And I think the goal for Ian this year, and I mentioned on our bold predictions episode that I think Ian could be in for a really big year, career high in homers, just seems more comfortable. If Ian could figure out the right side a little bit more, just a little bit more elevation from the right side, because he hits the ball hard on the right side. It's just pretty much everything's into the ground. I think this is the year Ian should focus on being an 800 OPS guy. See if you can get that OPS to 800. You OPS 808, and you play gold glove defense in left field, this is going to be a good year for the Chicago Cubs. That's what I'd like to see Ian focus on. And I think I'm expecting that. I'm expecting a big year from Ian Happ. PCA. This is probably the easiest one and the most fun one because I have no idea. And that's fun. It's fun to not know what to expect out of a guy. Could it be bad? Sure. We don't know, offensively. When you look at the whole picture last year, yeah, the offense, the savant pages, the percentile stuff doesn't look great. But when you look at the flashes, when you look what he was able to do in August and even, continued in a way in September, it's a really special player. Overall, I would just like PCA to be very solid offensively and just if you can hit 250, 260, if that on base is just over 300 for PCA with his defense and his speed, that's going to be plenty for this Cubs team. But as I talked about on the bold prediction episode, I think he could be much, much more than that. Seiya at DH. My situation with Seiya is I've given up on the Seiya Suzuki. Maybe he could hit 35 homers. Maybe he could be a 920 OPS guy. Maybe he could be in the MVP conversation. I'm done with that because I just don't think that's who he is. Just be who you are. Just be who you are, which is a really good hitter. Just be if you're the exact guy you were last year, that's good enough. Because as we're going to talk about with our last guy in 1 second, that's really good to be the second best hitter on your team. So just be the second best hitter on this team. OPS 840, 850. 130 WRC plus, 128, whatever it was last year is fine. Just be that guy. It's going to be frustrating sometimes with Seiya. That's just how he is, but just be that guy. And last but not least for the position players, and I could do this for pitchers next if you guys enjoy it. Let me know. Comment below. Kyle Tucker. Kyle, I know Kyle's an introverted guy. Just listening to his interviews, he's a little bit quiet, and this probably isn't his style. But what a tremendous opportunity Kyle Tucker has this year. He's going to be asking for $300-400 million in free agency, and he gets to be the best player on a golden type franchise for the Chicago Cubs. With all due respect to the Houston Astros, this is just different. The history here, it's just different. From April until the Bears kick off, he can own this city by being the best athlete that this city has and that has had for quite a while. The city is yours. Go out there and be special, man. Have an OPS of 909. Hit 35 plus home runs, drive in 100 plus runs, steal 30 bases. Go be a star. Go be in the MVP conversation. Go take this city. If you're only going to be here 1 year, let's make it a year that you remember and go take this team to a division title because you're capable of doing that. It's your time, Kyle. You want $300-400 million? Go play like it. Coming up next, we are going to talk about some of the best and worst trades in Cubs history. It's pretty cool. I really enjoy doing this. You guys will get a kick out of it. Let's talk about that next. We are back here on Locked On Cubs, and it's best and worst time trades for the Chicago Cubs. I want to give some credit here. I knew the trades that I wanted to do. I have some honorable mentions and then some top fives of best and worst, but I didn't know the exact trades. I just knew the main guys in each trade. So I want to give some credit here. Jordan Bastian with the MLB.com covers the Cubs, and Al Yeldon, Bleed Cubby Blue. I used their articles. They wrote some really good articles about the best and worst Cubs trades. So I got the information of the exact names from them. So thanks for that. All right, let's start with the best, folks. The Cubs trades, part of their franchise, ages really, really well. The best, I could have put 12 names on here, or 12 trades. Honorable mention. Rick Sutcliffe, the Rick Sutcliffe trade from Cleveland. The Cubs received George Frazier, Ron Hassey, some of these guys I probably don't know how to pronounce their name, Rick Sutcliffe, and they gave up Darryl Banks, Joe Carter, Mel Hall, pitcher Don Schultz. That was June of 1984. That's an honorable mention. In July of 2003, one that was very near and dear to my heart, the Cubs traded Matt Brubach, Jose Hernandez, Bobby Hill, and received Kenny Lofton and a third baseman by the name of Aramis Ramirez. That I had a hard time not putting that in my top five, but in a minute you'll see why. And then another honorable mention, November 24th, 2003, the Cubs give up Hee-Sop Choi and a right-hander named Mike Nanini. I think I'm pronouncing that right. And they received a first baseman, new Cubs Hall of Famer by the name of Derek Lee. Top five. Best and worst. Number 5, Andrew Cashner for Anthony Rizzo. This one has to be in there. It just has to be. Anthony Rizzo coming to the Cubs was the first move where it's just, I mean, it's unbelievable how much Theo got right in the beginning here. I know the ending wasn't great, but I mean, he just nailed so many of these trades, and this was the start of it. He loved Rizzo, and it goes without saying the impact that Anthony Rizzo had on this era, this team, this franchise. I mean, so many people in my life still love Anthony Rizzo, and he's their favorite Cub. And, no Rizzo, no ring. So got to put that one on there. Number 4, speaking of no trade, no ring, July 2nd, 2013, Scott Feldman and Steve Clevenger go to the Baltimore Orioles for a pitcher by the name of Jake Arrieta and a reliever by the name of Pedro Strop. That trade doesn't happen. Cubs probably don't win the World Series. So thank you very much for that. What an unbelievable deal that was. I mean, Theo, man, what an executive. Number 3, April 21, 1966. Cubs give up a pitcher by the name of Bob Boole and Larry Jackson. And they got John Hernstein, Adolfo Phillips, and a right-handed pitcher by the name of Ferguson Jenkins. He turned out to be pretty good. Fergie Jenkins. He's pretty much the leader in every single category of any Cubs pitching of all time. I'd say that was a pretty good deal. I'll be honest. I do a lot of trivia on this show, and I'm supposed to be pretty good at it. I didn't even realize that was a transaction. So I learned a lot doing this. That was pretty cool. Number 2, March 30th, 1992. Cubs give out an outfielder by the name of George Bell. They receive a left-handed pitcher named Ken Patterson and an outfielder by the name of Sammy Sosa. Mr. Sosa went on to hit 1 billion home runs for the Cubs. I think 545 to be exact. He had 60 home runs 3 different times. We all know the Sammy Sosa story. I just think the significance of that trade, especially it being with the White Sox, has to be on there. And number 1, and by the way, like 1 through 3 are interchangeable. Like Fergie could easily be number 1. January 27th, 1982, the Cubs give up shortstop Ivan DeJesus. They receive a shortstop by the name of Larry Boa. And then there was just this throw-in, this second baseman. Maybe he'll be pretty good, but let's see, whatever. That's just the throw-in in the deal, named Ryan Sandberg, a Hall of Famer and an MVP, and somebody that is absolutely so important to this Cubs franchise. And you're talking about, if you're doing a Mount Rushmore for the Chicago Cubs all time, let's just do it for, like, if you're doing that, if I were to do it, Sosa's on there, Fergie's on there, and Sandberg's probably on there, and of course Ernie Banks is on there. That would probably be my 4. And 3 of the 4 they got in a trade. Now, obviously, Billy Williams deserves to say. Ron Santo deserves to say. You could say that Theo deserves to say to be on that Mount Rushmore, even a Harry Carey, a Jack Brickhouse. I understand that it goes. But when most people are doing a Cubs Mount Rushmore, Fergie, Sosa, and Sandberg and Banks, I think that's probably the most popular 4. And 3 of them they got in a trade. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Worst, I'm not going to do, I don't have an honorable mention for the worst because there isn't that many bad ones. I put Ian Stewart for DJ LeMahieu on here in 2012. It's just an awful deal. Awful. It's not even as much about LeMahieu. I mean, he ended up having a really good career. He's not as good now, but the Ian Stewart thing, it never even came close. It never came close. Number 4, Cubs traded Lee Smith to the Red Sox, I believe, for 2 guys that I don't know, Al Napier and Calvin Schiraldi. And look, I'll be honest, I just know Lee Smith was really great, had a Hall of Fame career. That just doesn't seem like a great trade. Number 3, this is in 1988. The Cubs acquire Mitch Williams, Curtis Wilkerson, Paul Kilgus, Steve Wilson, Pablo Delgado. I mean, what a massive trade. But who did they trade? Jamie Moyer, Drew Hall. Jamie Moyer was great. And Rafael Palmeiro. Not a great deal. Number 2, 1987, April. Cubs get Brian Gwynn, Mark Leonette, and David Wilder from the Oakland A's for a pitcher by the name of Dennis Eckersley. Did not know that. Not a good trade. Hall of Fame level pitcher. And of course, everyone knows number 1 of the worst trades in the history of the sport. The Cubs traded Lou Brock to the rival Cardinals in 1964, along with Paul Spring and Jack Toff for Ernie Brolio, Bobby Shantz, and Doug Clemens. That's the easy number 1 and probably the worst trade in the history of the franchise. But overall, every team's going to have some really good trades and some really bad trades. I think that's a win. You trade for Fergie Jenkins, Ryan Sandberg, and Sammy Sosa? Come on. Good job. Good job, Cubs. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode today. Big takeaways. Look, I think Counsell's going to raise the bar in year 2. I think we're going to see a little bit different of a Counsell. 9 and 9 minutes. Just wanted to let you know what to expect out of all the guys. If you noticed, I need every guy to be pretty good, maybe a step up, and then Kyle Tucker needs to be a star, man. I'll keep saying it because it needs to happen. And then these trades. So we're almost there. 1 more full week of spring training shows before opening day. Thank you so much for checking out this edition of Locked On Cubs. You give us 20 to 30 minutes and we'll give you all things Cubs with a laugh or two along the way. Be sure to hit subscribe on YouTube, smash the like button for the algorithm, and leave a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts. I'm Sam Olber, and this is Locked On Cubs.